This is Martin Giles and the Guildford Dragon News, and today I'm with Inspector James Wyatt of Surrey Police. Thank you very much, James, for giving your time for the Guildford Dragon today.
Hi, Martin. Pleasure to speak with you.
And now you're the Surrey Police Borough Commander for Guildford. Can you tell us a bit about your background and police career? And are you from Surrey?
Of course, yeah. So I was born in Byfleet, went to school there and remained in Surrey for my whole life. I've been working for Surrey Police for 9 years now. The first few years of that, I worked as a response officer, both in Guildford and across West Surrey. And then on promotion, I went to work in the specialist neighbourhood team in Woking, where I kind of worked on problem solving with a partnership approach to try and deal with long-term chronic problems. I also spent some time in our safeguarding investigation unit investigating domestic abuse, spent some time working in our custody suites, and more recently, before starting this role, I worked as a duty inspector, which is the inspector who's responsible for response policing across West Surrey, dealing with any kind of fast time incidents, any emergency calls that are coming in. And then 2 months ago now, I joined the Guildford Specialist Neighbourhood team where I am now.
Great. Well, welcome to Guildford. I'm sure you don't really need my welcome. I'm sure you're familiar with the town, but that's quite a broad range of experience there, which is good. So what is the Borough Commander's role specifically?
So Borough Commander is the head of our specialist neighbourhood team. So essentially we work with partners from Guildford Borough Council, from all sorts of sectors to deal with long-term chronic issues and issues which require a more of a problem-solving approach to solve. Alongside my team, we take part in that problem-solving approach, meeting with partners, dealing with people and locations that might cause a disproportionate effect on the public,
Okay,
and also general crime in Guildford.
So what are those long-term issues and the main crime issues in the borough?
Of course. So one of our main priorities is high harm crime. So that can be domestic abuse, sexual offences, hate crime and child abuse. We spend a lot of time looking at that, how we can problem solve around those with the people involved and the places involved as well. So we have that as one of our borough priorities. Another is burglary. Which is historically yearly. We get into the winter months and burglaries tend to go up. I'm pleased to say they haven't this year, although I think that's mostly COVID related. We've had a 44% reduction in burglaries this year, but it doesn't mean we can I can become complacent with that. We're still looking at ways that we can problem solve, work with the community to better safeguard ourselves against burglars. And another area of our that we prioritise is antisocial behaviour, which, while in small doses perhaps doesn't seem particularly serious, when looked at the impact upon someone's quality of life that can have can be quite a serious impact upon them. So we look at getting criminal behaviour orders against individuals who are causing a disproportionate effect on the public, and also closing properties down which are causing neighbours to have a lessened quality of life.
Okay, now I know that Guildford and Surrey generally is a relatively safe area of the country, but there are some issues. I mean, recently it was reported that almost 87% of the high harm crimes you mentioned recorded in Surrey failed to result in a satisfactory action against the suspected perpetrator. So what is the problem there? Why can't you resolve more of those high harm crimes?
Yeah, and it's something which obviously concerns us, and we work constantly to try and address. It's worth noting that it's a national issue, which goes alongside increased reporting and the evidential difficulties that you can come across quite often with this type of crime. It's also probably worth noting that a positive outcome in the traditional sense of a charge or a caution aren't necessarily always positive outcomes in terms of the victim. They might be referrals to partners to support them, charities who might be able to help them. and it doesn't reflect the work that goes on. For example, if we're not able to charge someone through evidential difficulties, we will apply for a domestic violence protection order against that individual, which, while not showing as a positive outcome, creates a barrier between between the suspect and the victim, allowing time to breathe, time for partners and charities to become involved and prevent that happening again. And that all comes back to our problem solving approach. So while we may not be able to get a positive outcome from something, we're trying to prevent that harm happening again in the future.
Okay, and is the figure in the borough roughly the same as the 87% across the county?
I don't have the exact figure, but yes, I believe it is a 13%
Okay.
in that region of positive outcomes.
And you say about the, some of the evidential challenges. Am I right in thinking that where you've got a crime where only two people are present, or it's quite difficult sometimes to get a guilty verdict in court?
That's one of the complications, and it's quite a complex subject. So
Yeah.
there are, while that does limit evidential opportunities, absolutely, there are methods such as res geste evidence where you can introduce hearsay, for example, into court proceedings. But yes, there is historically evidential difficulties in this type of crime.
Okay. Now, what impact has the COVID pandemic had on your operations here in Guildford?
So primarily, initially, it's kind of changed our working practices. So officers and staff have had to adapt, and I've been really proud in the way in which they've quickly adapted to working within the guidelines and the restrictions to protect the people of Guildford and Surrey. People may well have heard our approach, which is the 4 E's, which is engage, explain, encourage, and enforce, which we've adopted in dealing with any kind of breaches of guidelines. And I'm really pleased to say that in the last lockdown that we've just come out of, only one fixed penalty notice was issued because of going through that process with people and helping them to learn. So it's been a big change in the way in which we police, and it's also changed crime types. For example, we discussed that burglaries have gone down by 44%, which is no doubt people being home more. But then we've looked at more burglaries towards commercial premises, while perhaps people aren't in them due to lockdown. So
Yeah.
we've had to adapt how we approach that as well.
Okay, and how many officers have you got to deploy across the borough?
So under my command in the specialist neighbourhood team, I've got 3 sergeants, 6 PCs and 16 PCSOs dealing with the long-term problem solving side of things. But we're supported by our neighbourhood policing team, who are the response team, and they also manage volume crime investigation. So they'll generally have around about 16 officers and their sergeants at any one time. And then again, we're supported by our CID department and SIU, which is a safeguarding investigation unit, who investigate domestic violence, child abuse, and vulnerable adult crime, and they provide a more specialist support.
Okay, and I guess there are other specialist teams that operate within the borough for their particular function.
Absolutely.
Like for instance.
Yep, so we've got lots of central teams, traffic, firearms, and kind of more kind of serious and organised crime teams, things like that, who will operate force-wide and adapt to kind of emerging needs.
Yeah, okay. Now, what's the function and the role of Guildford Police Station? We pass it regularly, but actually what goes on in there?
So it's the operational base for Guildford. And for West Surrey, for many things. So you've got my team working here, the specialist neighbourhood team. You've got the response side and the volume investigation in our neighbourhood policing team, and then those investigation teams we spoke about as well. But in addition to what we've discussed, you've also got a custody suite and a front counter. So if there's any questions or crimes anyone wants to report in person, they're able to come in here to our front counter staff and report in that way.
Okay, is it still a section house as well, or is all that accommodation gone? Accommodation for police officers?
No, there's no accommodation here anymore.
Okay, and tell us something about some of the new technology you're employing in your operations. Not all of it, but just perhaps highlight a couple of things that are being useful to you at the moment.
Yeah, of course. In recent years, we've worked towards moving towards mobile data terminals, which are essentially are handheld devices, much like a smartphone anyone has, which streamline the way officers on the front line are able to do their work. They can go through fixed penalty notices, traffic issues. They can conduct searches on there. For example, if you needed to search an individual or a vehicle, historically you would have had to call up a control room and ask for that information, whereas now that's all at their fingertips. In addition, with the support of fingerprint readers, which work with those, which are extremely useful. That's one way in which we're making best use of technology. Also, we make use of ANPR cameras, automatic number plate reading cameras, to help deny the roads from offenders, essentially, to try and control people who are using our road network to commit crime.
And that must be useful investigations as well, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah, that's key.
Okay, so you're recruiting. What are you going to do with the new constables that you're? Are you expecting additional constables for Guildford Borough?
Yes, yeah. So while we're not the only receipt of the additional constables that will be coming in, on my team, in the specialist neighbourhood team, I'll be getting 2 additional neighbourhood support officers, so police officers who will work towards dealing with those long-term problem solving, and also a youth engagement officer who goes into schools, colleges, and works with those partners as well as the children to try and deal with any issues they might be facing.
And when are you expecting them? Over the next few months?
So one has already been received, and yeah, the other 2 will be at the start of New Year is when I expect them.
Good. Now, how can we, as the public, better support you as the police? Because obviously it's in everyone's interest to keep crime down. So what can we do to improve our support of the police?
My main message would probably be report anything you think is relevant. So whether that's some antisocial behaviour which you've experienced or witnessed, or someone acting suspiciously, for example, paying attention to properties or vehicles, while in that isolated moment it might not seem important, it plays a huge part of our building our bigger picture. Again, while you might not get an immediate response from an officer, because we have to prioritise what we deal with, all that information forms part of a bigger intelligence picture, which then helps us to decide how I can deploy my resources. So it's really a plea to report any of that information, because it's all massively helpful.
Okay.
And that
sorry.
can be. Oh, sorry, go on.
Well,
I was just going to.
Go on. You carry on.
And I was just going to say, obviously you've got the 101 number, but I would recommend using our online service, because you can then send that information in your own time, and you're not waiting for anything. We receive it immediately, and then that's with us.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you about. So you're suggesting it's better for everybody if you go online rather than queue up in the phone queue?
If you have access to online, definitely, I would recommend that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what 3 things would you advise Guildford residents to do, Guildford residents in the borough to do to help prevent crime?
So first of all, it will be securing properties. So making sure doors and windows are locked, side gates, and sheds, things like that. We deal with burglaries where quite often these things are left unlocked, and just those simple measures would perhaps prevent an opportunist burglar targeting that property. So really, it would be to have a review of security around people's properties, and we can certainly assist with that. If there's any crime prevention advice, then we'd be happy to share that with people, so people can contact us about that. Again, to discuss what we've gone over, reporting everything that they see that they deem to be suspicious, and antisocial behaviour, to help build that picture for us, so that we can make decisions about how to deploy our resources, and also to mark property as well. So if you register your property on websites such as Immobilize, or mark your property with products such as Selected DNA, then if you unfortunately were to be victim of a burglary or a theft, we quite often find stolen property, but we're unable to attribute it to a
Hmm.
particular crime or person, then again, that helps massively with both returning the products to the individual, but also being able to prosecute that offender.
Okay.
So those would be
Now,
my main three.
thank you. Now, sensitivity to racial and minority issues has increased recently, and understandably. What do you do to ensure fair treatment of everyone under the law within the borough?
Essentially, I'd answer that by saying there is no differentiation in how we treat people at the point of reporting something through that investigation to the outcome. There is no change in service you'll receive from the police. So we're open in that way as such, but also when it comes to hate crime, we're very kind of proactive in dealing with it. We look for hotspots where hate crime is occurring more. We work with partners to try and reduce that as well, to send out that message to people who are perpetrating hate crime, but also victims that we're there for them and they should report offences like that to us.
Okay, but do you feel that, are you confident that your officers do actually treat people fairly regardless of their backgrounds?
Yes, yeah, 100% confident. In my time working with Surrey Police, I've not once witnessed anything to the contrary.
Okay, and have there been any recent instances in the borough?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No. Okay, thanks. Right, and lastly, why do we see police vehicles with blues and twos, go rushing to an emergency, and then we don't hear anything about it? Is there an emergency, or is it just that the canteen's closing?
So there's always a reason for an officer driving to an emergency with blues and twos. They have to justify why they're used, and they're generally used off the back of an incident, an emergency being reported through our control room. So they're deployed by our control room to go to that incident. So equally, there's a record of why they were used and where they were going to. The reason you may not hear about it is because there's multiple emergencies a day, so it wouldn't be feasible to update you on all of them. And also there's a public interest and the data protection issue. So if it's in the public interest, then that will be something that will come through our media team. But that equally might be going to help someone in need, and it wouldn't be appropriate to release that information. So I would say if there's any questions about a particular incident, then refer that to our media team.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, thank you very much again for your time, Inspector Wyatt, and good luck with your operations. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in Guildford that are very grateful for the service you provide. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.